video, I want to quickly discuss how to add seam allowance. Now I'm going to show you how I do it. Of course, there are various methods of adding seam allowance, but this is tried and true and what I love. So, of course, I'm going to use my favorite pattern making tool of all time, my clear plastic ruler. I just adore it. It's so simple yet so perfect. So the first thing that I will do is I'm just going to use my L square. You don't necessarily need to do this, but I'm going to draw my right angle here. Now, of course, I'm using a Sharpie so you can see it on camera, but you'll use a pencil as always. Okay, so let's say I drafted this, I sewed my muslin, everything fits wonderful, so I'm ready to make this a production pattern, or you know, not necessarily production in the home sewing setting, but this is a pattern that you know fits perfect and you're going to be sewing a lot of or whatnot. So I'm going to line this up, make sure everything is perfect there, and I'll use a different color here so we can see that. Okay, so I'm going to just trace my pattern. Perfect. So, of course, you can just use your ruler and add your specific amount of seam allowance right off of the pattern, and then your pattern, your outline would already include the seam allowance, you know, so you'd have your sewing, you'd have your cut lines, and then, but you wouldn't be able to see your sewing lines, I guess is my point. I prefer to trace the pattern and then add my seam allowance on the outside of the sewing line, because I just like to see it kind of at a glance, you know. I don't have to read anything. Like you just can visualize it. I don't know. I think home sewing patterns are like that, aren't they? Pretty sure the ones you can buy at the fabric store are like that. Okay. Oh, you know what I forgot to do, y'all? I forgot to do this. Line that back up there. Forgot to mark my bust point. Now, of course, this pattern I'm working from here is a it's a pattern block, and normally this would be dropped and that would be anyway, but let's not worry about that right now, okay? So my little dot's right here. I'll just tell myself it's there. Okay, now let's get into it. So to add the seam allowance, again, clear plastic ruler, the most awesome tool ever. What I'm gonna do actually, guys, is just extend this line just a hair. Okay, so say this is, well, this is a woven block. So I want to add 1/2 inch. So on my clear plastic ruler, 1/2 inch is this line right, here. So 1/4 and 1/2. So the reason why this ruler is so cool is because I can see through it. So what I can do is I can line my ruler up on my little red line here. Excuse me, on my little red line here, and then I can just follow along. Now, if you have little curves like this, it's perfectly acceptable to put little dashes just like that, you know, as you're going along, because this waist here curves just a hair. So you can do little dashes because it's easier than trying to draw a smooth line as you're pivoting, right? So just like that. And then what you can do after you've done all that is you can do what we call blend and true and use your curved rulers to get a nice line there. And we can do the same thing here. We just line it up where it fits and then draw in that shape just like that. So the side seam is really easy, 1/2 inch, just line it up straight. So this one I can just go all the way through. Okay, Wonderful. We'll connect this here. And then, okay, so our armhole will be the same thing as that little curved bit there at the waist. I'll just draw little dashes. The more dashes you put, the better it will be to make your line smooth. Okay, just keep going all the way around. Okay, and that line goes pretty straight right there. Awesome. So then you should just be able to fit in your French curve. Take those out of the way. Wherever your French curve fits in. Guys, this one is too long when I have a bunch of stuff on the table. Okay, so my shoulder seam here is straight. I got a little bit of a dart here, and then I go back straight. And if you read the post, you'll see, like, I've decided this is a woven I want 1/2 inch, but on my neckline I'm only going to want 1/4 inch, so that is this line right here. So I'll do the same thing for my neckline. And there's that little dog, guys, that thinks she saw something outside. Yeah, this is a lot harder to do while you're filming it, y'all. Okay, so I should be able to see, does this guy fit? It, you know, in a perfect world it does, guys. It should. So anyway, I'll just connect these. Excellent. And I'll draw these in just for good measure. So that way I can show you how to use the pattern notcher. Excellent. Okay, so you would also probably have, you know, any of your markings. You would have, okay, that's my grain line. This is my, I think this is a back pattern. No, it's a front pattern, center front pattern, or whatever else you want to put on there. If you want to put on there cut 2 of yada yada, whatever. Or label front bodice, you know, whatever information that you need. Add that on now. And of course, this is cut on the fold, right? That's why I put that little marking. So you can also do it like this. Put this little kind of shape, cut on fold, and note that for yourself. So you would never add seam allowance on a cut on fold, right? Because you want it to open up. Okay, so let's cut this out. And when you're cutting on your line, you really want to cut, ideally, like I said, you're going to use a pencil because my line's really thick. And if I cut on either or side of that, I've almost added, you know, 1/8 of an inch to my pattern. So if I do that for all of my pattern pieces, I could end up adding 1/2 inch or more to my pattern. So make sure you use a nice thin pencil and you cut right on the line. Guys, I'm really not doing like a perfect job here because, you know, it's really hard to do with the camera and the table and the microphone and, you know, not doing it for demonstration purposes, not actually going to sew this, of course. Like I said, there's many ways to do this. This is just my favorite tried and true method, okay? And, well, when you're making patterns at home, you know, anything goes, guys. Like, this is not the fashion industry. You don't have to do things exactly the way they might teach in school or the way, you know, they do in the industry. Because, you know, like, this isn't the industry, right? You're just trying to sew, like, good-looking clothes for yourself. All right. So I know I didn't really go over blending and truing. We'll do that in another video, but just briefly, you would make sure your corners are square where they need to be square. You'd make sure your curves, like how I was trying to make this, you'd make sure your curves are good, everything is nice and smooth, and so anyway, that's called blending and truing, and we'll talk about that in another lesson. So I've got my pattern all cut out and the handy pattern notcher. This thing's awesome too, guys. So what you're gonna use this for is to mark your dart legs. So remember when I traced around my pattern, I was able to kind of notch in this little red bit there. So you just notch. Here, see if I can get closer for you. You just line it up and notch, and then you'll have those nice little notches. We'll do the same thing on the top. Just like that. In another place, some people will notch their seam allowance. Personally, I don't do that, but I would notch it if this was a hem. So like this is meant to be a crop top and this was 2 or 3 times bigger. I would notch it right there and say, oh, okay, that's my hem. So, and since, like I said, since this is not the industry and this is your home sewing patterns, put any information you want on here, whatever you need to make sure that you know what this is. And of course, don't forget to print out one of the pattern cards, and then you can keep track on here too of all your different pattern pieces and how many to cut, and you can say cut on fold, and then you can put your little sewing instructions so you have the correct order of operation. And then if you wanted to, you could say 1/2 inch seam allowance, 1/4 inch on neckline, whatever you need on here. So don't forget to download one of these, and I'll link to it in the post. And I hope that was helpful, and I hope that y'all love the clear plastic ruler as much as I do, because I love it dearly. All right, well, I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, all right? Thanks.